welcome to a new edition of our program Africa Today. And in this edition of our program, we will review some reports from the African continent and South Africa, which led international efforts to brand the Israeli assault on Gaza a genocide, welcomed the arrest warrant requests by the International Criminal Court, and said that the law must be applied equally to all. Separately, South Africa has lodged a complaint at another court in The Hague, the International Court of Justice, complaining that Israel's campaign in the Palestinian territory of Gaza amounts to genocide. Details in this report.
The prosecutor of the International Criminal Court on Monday applied for arrest warrants against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and top Hamas leaders on suspicion of war crimes and crimes against humanity. Netanyahu rejected the landmark request with disgust, while Foreign Minister Israel Katz slammed it as a historical disgrace that will be remembered forever. The U.S. also firmly criticized the prosecutor's move. Prosecutor Karim Khan said he was seeking warrants against Netanyahu and Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant for crimes including starvation, willful killing and extermination and/or murder. Khan said in reference to Netanyahu and Gallant, quote, "We submit that the crimes against humanity charged were committed as part of a widespread and systematic attack against the Palestinian civilian population, pursuant to state policy. These crimes," he said, "in our assessment continue to this day." U.S. President Joe Biden called the application outrageous, and Secretary of State Antony Blinken denounced it as shameful. The charges laid against the Hamas leaders, including Yahya Sinwar, the head of the movement in Gaza, and Ismail Haniyeh, the movement's political chief, are over alleged war crimes. Hamas said it strongly condemns the ICC prosecutor's application for arrest warrants against its leaders, but said it supported the ICC's move against Netanyahu and Gallant. South Africa, which led international efforts against the Israeli genocide in Gaza, welcomed the arrest warrant requests and said the law must be applied equally to all. ICC judges will now decide whether the application meets the threshold for the warrants to be formally issued, a process that could take some weeks or even months. Veteran war crimes prosecutor Reed Brody said the application was a watershed event in the history of international justice.
And we are joined over the phone by Ambassador Medhat Miligy, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Good afternoon, sir. Ambassador Medhat? Yes. It seems there is a technical problem. And back to our reports from Africa. South Africa's top court barred former President Jacob Zuma from running in general elections next week, but his upstart opposition party vowed to fight on to return the graft-tainted politician to office. The ruling has stoked fears of violent unrest in the run-up to the poll, already the most competitive since the advent of democracy in 1994. Details follow.
Former South African President Jacob Zuma was disqualified Monday from running for a parliament seat in next week's national election because of a previous criminal conviction. The decision by the country's highest court is certain to raise political tensions ahead of a pivotal vote in Africa's most advanced economy, as Zuma leads a new political party challenging former allies. The Constitutional Court said a section of the Constitution disqualifying people from standing for Parliament if they have been sentenced to more than 12 months in prison without the option of a fine does apply to the 82-year-old former leader Zuma, who was sentenced to 15 months in prison in 2021 by the court for contempt for refusing to testify at a judicial inquiry into government corruption. Zuma cannot serve as a lawmaker until 5 years after that sentence is completed, the court said in a ruling 9 days ahead of the May 29 election. Zuma once led South Africa's ruling African National Congress party but was forced out as its leader in 2017 and resigned as president in 2018 under a cloud of corruption allegations. He returned to politics late last year with a new party and renewed his fierce criticism of the ANC and current President Cyril Ramaphosa, who replaced him as both party leader and president.
And we are joined over the phone by Ambassador Medhat Miligy, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon to you.
So, sir, how do you weigh the ICC decisions to issue arrest warrants against Israeli leaders, the first of their kind in history?
Well, could you repeat the question, please? I can't hear you clearly.
Yes, how do you weigh the ICC decisions to issue arrest warrants against Israeli leaders, the first of their kind in history?
Well, the most important thing is that finally we have a legal body internationally recognized from the whole world and represents the whole world conscience and the international community that is accusing Israeli officials of committing war crimes. And this does not leave in front of the Israeli supporters any room to avoid that by saying that Israel has the right to defend itself. According to the 51st article of the Charter of the United Nations, the right of defense, self-defense, is limited to just answer back to this. But what's perpetrated right now on the Palestinian people is nothing less than a full-fledged genocide. And this is what this court have issued and declared, and now we are going to enter a new phase that is legally going to recognize Israel as a state that does not abide by the international law or the international humanitarian law. So I think that this is a game changer, as we can call it, because for the first time we have not just the Palestinians or the Arabs or the supporters of the world peace are accusing Israel of that. No, this is an international court that is linked to the United Nations, which has a very huge credibility and will put every country who wants to assist Israel with military aid or with financial or economic or political support to reconsider once again what kind of message it wants to give to the rest of the world.
So, sir, a number of European countries and China welcomed the ICC decisions. How do you read their stance, and would you say you expected it?
Well, I think that any country who wants to support the world peace, especially in the region of the Middle East, has to support and has to express their gratitude to issue such a declaration from the International Criminal Court. Of course, as we know that this court do not judge countries or states, it judges persons. So now we have two persons, which is the head of the Israeli extreme right government, Benjamin Netanyahu, and his Minister of Defense, Yoav Gallant. Both of them accused clearly by committing war crimes. So any country who wants to support the international law has to support this decision. And any country who is against or on the other side of the international law will disapprove of the court decision. Actually, we've seen outrageous reactions from the United States that shows that there is a total disrespect to the international court and what it represents. Because when you threaten an international body, such as the United Nations, one of its affiliated organizations, when you threaten this organization by committing a wrongdoing, you are accusing the whole international community by wrongdoing, which is also another isolation that the United States is putting itself into. Of course, we do understand the reaction of the Israelis, since they don't want their leaders to be accused of any crimes. But coming from another country that basically is one of the biggest supporters of the international new order and the United Nations, this gives a very bad image of how the United States really respects the international law and its organizations. And I think this is the most important thing. And the story hasn't ended. We will still see other reactions from other worlds, and we will see what will happen to the Israeli in charge. Of course, there is another issue that we need also to discuss, which is what I think has to be reconsidered about also giving the same sentence or the same declaration about three of Hamas leaders. Hamas leaders are a group of Palestinian resistance, and according to the international law, they have to do anything in their power to restore their self-determination and their independence. And accordingly, we need more clarification from the International Court of Justice why it also summoned three of Hamas leaders, since they are not meant by the same articles that are addressed towards the Israeli leaders. But this is another step that I think that the Palestinians will also have to inquire about the justifications behind the court decision to summon three of Hamas leaders.
Yes, Mr. Ambassador, also, do you expect that the student movements worldwide will affect the political scene?
I'm sorry, would you repeat that again?
Yes, do you expect that the student movements worldwide will affect the political scene?
Well, of course, I mean, anything that comes out of this court now is bound by a legal jurisdiction. And this is what gives it its credibility. This is not a body that is independent. This is an international body linked to the United Nations, and in a certain way has the credibility and has the support of the world community. And that's from here we have this support to the court, because it is not a state or an independent organization that is accusing Israeli officials or Hamas officials with committing war crimes. This is the international community that is accusing on the tongue of the International Criminal Court. So I think that that's why I called it from the beginning. This is a game changer, because now we are going to, Israel has to answer, even though it is not one of the signatory countries, but since the jurisdiction of the court is on the Palestinian territory, which, by the way, remind me of something very important, that the court have recognized the independence and the credibility of the Palestinian territory. And this is also something very important, because they declared their position, and they declared those, and they summoned those, according to the court, criminals, all of them, since it is on Palestinian territory. And that's another recognition of a presence of a Palestinian territory, something that Israel has always wanted to avoid, declaring that there is a Palestinian territory. So now, once again, we have from this court a recognition of a presence of a Palestinian territory, where this court have a jurisdiction over, and that's why they managed to summon those accused people.
So I'd like to thank you, Ambassador Medhat Miligy, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Thank you, sir, for being with us. And back to our reports from the African continent. And the DR Congo military said it had thwarted an attempted coup near the offices of President Felix Tshisekedi in Kinshasa, involving foreigners and Congolese. It happened in the early hours of Sunday outside the residence of the Economy Minister in the Gombe area, north of the capital, near the Palais de la Nation, which houses the president's offices. More in this report.
The Congo military said Sunday it had thwarted an attempt coup near the offices of President Felix Tshisekedi in Kinshasa, involving foreigners and Congolese. A spokesman said it happened in the early hours of Sunday outside the residence of Economy Minister Vital Kamerhe in the Gombe area in the north of the capital, near the Palais de la Nation that houses the president's offices. Shots were also heard near the nation's palace at the time of the coup bid, according to a number of sources. The army spokesman said several Americans and a British man were part of the group involved in the operation. The U.S. ambassador to Kinshasa said she was shocked by the events, while the African Union said it strongly condemns the attempted putsch. The plot was reportedly led by Christian Malanga, a Congolese man who was a naturalized American and had been definitively neutralized, killed by the security forces, Ikenge said in a broadcast on Sunday evening. The group was made up of several nationalities, as he said. He added that around 40 of the attackers had been arrested and 4, including Malanga, killed. Malanga's son, Marcel Malanga, was also among the attackers. Kemerhe and his family were not harmed, but 2 police officers looking after them were killed. The military said the group had planned to attack the home of new Prime Minister Judith Suminwa and the residence of Defense Minister Jean-Pierre Bemba. But they could only identify the home of Suminwa and had not been able to find Bemba at the residence. The military said that after the attack at Kemerhe's home, the group went to the nation's palace, brandishing flags of Zaire, the name of the Democratic Republic of the Congo under the dictator Mobutu Sese Seko, who was overthrown in 1997.
And by that, dear viewers, we come to the end of today's edition of Africa Today. Thank you for watching.